We go. And we are live. Hersh, welcome again, the message therapist. And for those of you who don't know me, I am the sales whisperer. The whispering you're hearing is actually from a foster dog. So if you're hearing a little yowling in the background, that's where it's coming from. So, Hersh, apparently you got stimulated this morning reading a post on LinkedIn. Am I right?
Yes, it was a post of yours. Um, and it happened to dovetail with some other research that I was doing. I was researching client acquisition practices, and and psychology plays such a big part in sales and marketing, obviously. And you can speak to your post. I don't want to kind of misstate what you were writing about, but you happen to be, I guess, you know, great minds think alike, and you happen to be in the same headspace, and it is spurred this interest. Oh, that's good. We have audience participation, which is very important with the foster doggy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh,
is
I thought there was a real person and you're referring to the yowling dog.
Yeah, right. The idea of using our psychology for good. In other words, you could say, well, I'm going to do sales. I'm going to just tell them exactly what this is. I'm going to not frame it with any particular point of view, and I'm just going to give them the information, and that's the most ethical thing to do. But that's not what sales is about. But there is an ethical responsibility. So I was curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I love what you're hinting at here, or at least what I am gathering from what you're saying, because it has to do again with framing our message, and you being the message therapist, who better to help point out to us that when we are marketing and selling, there are messages that we are obviously communicating to our audience. And the thing that I wrote about this morning in LinkedIn has to do with selling is sleazy only if you're sleazy. And that was the point. It isn't that the act of selling is sleazy. It's the fact that the words being used to convey, or maybe the intention behind it, Hersh, are what become sleazy. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. Um, because I think that, speaking for myself, we come to sales as a customer, let's say, and as a result, as a seller, with biases, and if we perceive salespeople as being manipulative and deceptive, then we're probably going to hesitate in selling our own products, even though we totally believe in them. We're going to feel like there's something wrong with selling. Like there's something. And I remember being a kid, and a salesman came to our house and was sitting having coffee with my parents and pitching them. And even at a young age, I was probably 10 years old, I just got this negative vibe from the idea that he was selling, and my parents were even a little bit upset with me that I had this negative view of this person, because he was a perfectly nice person, but there was something about the suit and the briefcase and the pitch that I just identified as somehow manipulative, and it was very unconscious. But I think that it's taken me a long time to say, to kind of come around to, yeah, well, if you don't sell people something, they're not going to know what it is. They're not going to know what the
And
value is.
the value, see, that is the key. What you just said is that we have to focus on the value. And when people feel that selling is sleazy, whether you as that child, or the person selling themselves, if they're thinking, ooh, I feel, that this is sleazy, that's what we have to take a look at. Because I looked up the definition of sleazy, and there are many, but the one that I basically settled on is the fact that it is with intention, that one is making a statement that is deceptive and embellished, untrue, not substantiated. And somehow as a child, you noticed that situation that it seemed like it was being manipulative towards a certain endpoint, and the endpoint was to purchase whatever the guy was peddling, as opposed to serving your family with something of value. See, when there's value, we don't have to worry about whether there's a sleaze factor.
Right, right. Well, also, the fact is, as I reflect on it, he was a stranger to me, right? And he was also a stranger to my parents, at least, from the point of view of anything that I knew. Maybe he had called, made an appointment. I don't even know. But the idea that the know, like, trust factor had not been established, and this person wanted money, clearly, right? Wanted our money or our, something to that felt threatening to me. It only popped into my head this morning after so many years, but it was it was underscoring the importance of trust and the value of trust, and also the fact that if we really know the value of what it is that we're selling, then we will be able to communicate it through our confidence, and that sleaze factor or fear of sleaze or whatever it is becomes not an issue for either person. And there's only one alternative to selling, which is giving. You can give away what you're giving, and we're doing like so many people, just getting on once a week and sharing some stuff and sharing pointers and giving value. But we're business people, so you can either just give away your expertise, or you can be compensated for it. But that is that's a trust and a value factor.
And it's interesting you should mention again trust, because we know that trust is really foundational to the sales process. Rarely will anyone fork over money without there being a level of trust that the other person is going to deliver what he or she claims to be representing. We don't give it without that trust factor. And so I was thinking, as you were just sharing now, Hersh, about my own experience as a child. Uncle Gene. Now, Uncle Gene was a family friend. He wasn't physically or biologically my uncle, but that as a child, we were told, obviously, to call him in that way. And Uncle Gene was a professional salesperson. He was hired by different kinds of companies, but not that I knew he changed companies on any kind of regular basis, but he was a, quote, salesperson. And I have to share with you that, of course, I trusted Uncle Gene. My parents trusted Uncle Gene. And yet, I, as a child, just like you as a child, had this sense of he was manipulative. And why did I get that feeling? Hersh, I think it came from, again, beautiful man in my life, right? Only treated me with kindness and love. His soft voice that had this kind of slickness to it, like he knew what he was going to say. Every line kind of came out with this suave and pizzazz, Again, he wasn't selling my parents, right, at that time, because we visited the family regularly and back and forth. But yet there is a quality, a tonality. And if you're not talking to the person, the words that we're reading on the page that conveys this sense of being slick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The polished thing is because now I'm thinking back to, people in my life that were friends of my parents, and they had that polished, salesy ability or quality. But because I knew them, and because I knew my parents knew them and trusted them and kind of vouched for their quality as people, it didn't put me off. Whereas
Yeah.
people that I knew to be the opposite, either through my parents or my own eyes, where I knew they were somewhat, their polish didn't had the opposite effect, had the total opposite effect. And I think that that's just something to keep in mind as we move through the world, and when we're working with our clients and we're trying to ready them for their sales meetings and for sharing their messaging, that this issue does exist. It isn't, they're not delivering in a vacuum.
Exactly. I'm glad that we're on this topic. And listeners, viewers, if you are here watching a replay, we'd love to have your input on this, because there is a stereotype that is definitely held, not just here in the US. When I've talked to people in Europe and in other countries, it seems to be a universally shared sense that salespeople are manipulative, hence sleazy. And that, especially as a professionally trained individual, which you are, you hold some sort of degree or license or certification, you've studied and you're clearly professional, that somehow I don't want to be associated with that sleaze factor, that manipulation factor that we think of as salesperson. And so many of us, not only do we push away that identification of being in sales, we don't want to sell at all. And folks, you are shooting yourself in the foot. You are self-sabotaging if you don't own the fact that you are trying to sell. It shouldn't be the thing you're thinking about, gee, I'm now talking to Hersh and I want to sell him on something. No, I'm talking to Hersh. I want to understand where he's coming from. What are his needs? What are his desires? And maybe if there's some corresponding thing that I offer, I can then share with him, hey, Hersh, this is what you just said. Here it is. I have something that could help. That's the difference. Do you start with a mindset of, I want to sell to Hersh? Or do you start with a mindset of, I want to be of service?
Be of service. Yeah. That's the best lead in, is to think to yourself, how many people can I help this year? How many people can I help this year? Because helping, if we associate it with altruism, and we say, okay, well, you can only help people by giving them something for free, or you can help them because your expertise is of value to them and it's worth whatever the compensation is, whatever your job is. And I just think that in the world of entrepreneurialism, and in the world of sales and marketing consultants, coaches, people like that, we have to build our own infrastructure, so to speak, for selling and marketing. It's not the same as, we make balloons, or even that we're a dentist or doctor, or an accountant or attorney. We're a little more amorphous sometimes, and we have to formulate those standards for our engagements with our prospective clients.
Right. So again, we invite you to leave your comments, your input in regards to this idea. What do you think of selling? What is there a sleaze factor? Is that actually preventing you from doing your best and showing up to serve your clients? Again, they can't become your clients until you sell them, until you enroll them. And so there is a factor going on in which you are going to need to exchange their money for your service.
Yeah, that's right.
No shortcut, no way to get around it. So anyway, we will be here again next Tuesday with No and Sell Pointers, Tuesday at noon Eastern time. And in the meantime, we again are inviting you to weigh in. Maybe there's a topic you'd like us to discuss. Our focus has been on, marketing and sales messaging in order for you, obviously, to gain more clients. So we welcome your input. Anything more you'd like to share?
No, I think that's great, Nancy. And one thing that did just pop into mind, if you would like us to talk about personal brands versus corporate brands, that is another topic that is interesting and kind of is an offshoot of this relationship issue between the service provider and the client. So we may talk about personal branding next week, but if you have thoughts or requests, just drop them in the comments.
Perfect. To your sales success, this is Nancy Zare, Sales Whisperer.
And Hersh Rephun, the message therapist.